everybody. So I just moved, so there's nothing in my apartment. It might be a little bit echoey. I don't look phenomenal because I've been moving, I've been busy, whatever. I'm doing the best with what I have at the moment. But I wanted to make this video quickly before I don't know, forgot or acclimated, but I am currently training for my third marathon. It is in approximately 6 weeks. And so I wanted to talk about the difference between training at sea level, where I was training, at altitude, which is about 5,000 feet right now. So 5,000 isn't super high altitude. It certainly, you can get much higher, but it's definitely a big difference from training at sea level. So the most obvious difference between training at sea level versus training at altitude is that there is a difference in the amount of oxygen that is in the air and therefore the amount of oxygen that your body can utilize at a specific time. So there is not a difference in partial pressures in terms of percentages between sea level and at altitude, but the overall barometric pressure at altitude is lower than that at sea level. So that means that there is lower oxygen in the air, as well as lower nitrogen and lower carbon dioxide. The percentages don't change, but since the overall pressure decreases as you increase in altitude, there's less overall oxygen in the air. Maybe that's really technical, but basically what that means is that there's less oxygen for you to be breathing in. Your red blood cells don't have as much oxygen in them as they would at sea level, and therefore you feel not like you're dying, but certainly like you're struggling a lot more to breathe. It's just kind of like a fish out of water feeling of like, where's the oxygen? Like there's some, obviously, I'm still living, I'm still able to work out, but it's certainly not as comfortable as it would be at sea level, which is a struggle for a while. It kind of depends on your age, gender, weight, your level of activity, how often you change from sea level to altitude, but generally it would take a few weeks to fully acclimate, maybe 3 to even 6 weeks to fully acclimate, but over time you, like even after a couple days, you slowly start to acclimate, which basically means that your body produces more red blood cells, you have a higher affinity for oxygen, and you basically can deal with less oxygen. You can perform more efficiently on less oxygen after you acclimate. It takes time, you have to have patience. If you can help it, don't schedule a race like within 2 weeks after you arrive at a higher altitude. Well, you might be okay if you race like immediately upon arriving or like within the first 72 hours. I'm not totally positive on that, but in general, if you can allow your body to acclimate to the lower oxygen in the air, you'll perform better. Your body will adjust, but typically that takes time. And so I've been here for about 5 days and I'm not acclimated yet. I'm also bradycardic, so I'm a bit more sensitive than the average person of my age, height, gender, physical activity level. Family and I went up to the mountains. It was about 10 to 11,000 feet where we were, and they were huffing and puffing while we were hiking, and I was pretty much fine doing that. But I notice when I'm like trying to run and do a strenuous physical activity. So if you're a physically active person, you might be fine just kind of walking around, even at significantly higher altitudes, like 10,000 plus. But the real intense physical training, you're definitely going to notice a difference temporarily. It'll pass, and when you go back down to sea level, you might feel better. It gets kind of complicated in terms of the actual benefits because, well, yes, your body will have will develop more red blood cells after being at high altitude for a long time. Because there's not as much oxygen in the air, your body can't reach its full VO2 max, so you can't actually train to your fullest potential basically at altitude versus sea level. There's just not as much oxygen in the air, which means your VO2 max has to be less. There's just not as much as if there would be at sea level. So a lot of people think that training at altitude is so much better than training at sea level. And it's like, it's really, it has benefits, but it also has downfalls. And so it's complicated. Maybe that's another video. training at altitude can help you be more efficient with your oxygen usage. However, at least where I am, it's not a very humid environment. And so when I go back down, I'm gonna go back down to sea level for my 3rd marathon in a little over a month. I'm really hoping that it's not very humid because I'm not used to that. So the difference between training at altitude versus humidity basically makes you feel like your whole body is just slow. It feels like the air is really thick. Even if I consider myself a very physically active, physically fit person, I'm training for a marathon and running at really high humidity. I'm talking like over 70% humidity. Even doing 2 miles is really hard. I feel like I'm not a runner. Like I haven't been training. Of course I have, and of course I am in much better shape than I might feel while running in humidity, but it's just amazing how kind of sluggish you might feel when running in humidity. It's just really thick. You sweat profusely. It's tough. But there's plenty of oxygen in the air, so you're not really struggling to, your chest isn't burning. Whereas when you go up to high altitude, it kind of feels like your throat and your chest are just burning. It's like fish out of water feeling of like, where is the oxygen? I can't feel it. Physically, at least for me, I didn't feel too bad. Like muscularly, my arms, legs, everything else felt great. It was really it's just my chest and my throat. That might differ depending on your physical activity level or the activity that you're doing. But overall, I think humidity is basically an overall sluggish feeling. Until you train significantly in it, you kind of get used to it, you get stronger. But at least at first, it's a much more sluggish feeling. And then at altitude, same thing, eventually you acclimate. But at first, it's that kind of, I feel like I can't get oxygen into my chest, into my lungs, and therefore throughout the rest of my body. So they're different. I suppose a really great way to train would be at high altitude with humidity, but that could be pretty dangerous. But the best thing you can do wherever you're training is to just be patient, allow your body to adapt. Whatever you're feeling, if you're just moving from high altitude to low humidity or vice versa, you're going to feel different. You're going to feel not like yourself. And if you're not aware of the differences in the atmosphere, elevation, whatever it is, it might be a little bit unsettling. You might be like, oh, I've been training for so long. What happened to me? I must be way farther behind than I thought I was. I need to catch up. And it just, hopefully you can be aware that things are different. When the environment's different, it's going to affect you differently. Doesn't mean that you're forever at a loss. It just means you have to be patient and build up a resistance, tolerance, just more strength, whatever it is. So yeah, I'm going to try to be patient. I do have a marathon in 6 weeks, but I prepared as if I had a marathon pretty much right now because I knew that I would have to acclimate. I knew that I needed to be in as best shape as I could possibly be in before I reached the altitude, and I basically just needed to maintain my fitness once I hit altitude. It certainly would not be a good thing if this is my last month of training and I'm still trying to increase my miles. That would be tough. So I'm just trying to be patient. I'm giving myself 2 full weeks to kind of just ease into it. And then I might start pushing it more. Even if I don't feel fully acclimated, I at least, as long as I'm safe, I'm just gonna kind of take it week by week and see what happens, and really hope and pray that when I go back to sea level for my 3rd marathon in October, the humidity is not that intense. I don't think it will be in mid-October at 7 a.m. in the morning, but we're still just gonna pray. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll probably make more detailed videos on certain aspects of the altitude and acclimation and whatnot in the future. But until then, good luck, and I'll see you for the next video.